Hey, Jasen Rice here, LotParty tip. I'm gonna go over. I have this conversation a ton, but I just had one of my guys come to me and ask me. He wanted a little bit of insight because he had this dealer pushing back on him pretty hard about how he didn't want to adjust his pricing and he didn't want to give away his cars. And there's a couple things that I walk through dealers I walk dealers through this insight on how I look at the inventory, and I try to get them to agree with me this way. And if they agree with me this way, I think we're able to then help them adjust pricing. What's up, Robert? Hopefully you can hear me. So when they tell me, I don't want to give away my cars, the first thing I ask them is, please, define giving your car away. And when I ask them to define giving away their car, typically, surprisingly or not, a lot of times they would say, I just don't want to lose money on a car. I'll ask them, what's their definition of giving a car away? And they say, well, if I lose $500 or if I lose money on the car. That's a lot of times the reaction I'll get. So then I take a step back, and then I usually draw this on the screen, but I'll try to explain it to you here. Is I said, okay, well, let me ask you something. If there's 10 cars similar to yours in the market, and of those 10, the average asking price is $10,000, you price yours at $10,000, so you're at 100% of market, just like you'd be on a new car, MSRP. You just MSRP it, but used cars, let's talk about used cars. You're 100% of market, and you sell that car for 100% of market, 10 grand. Market's 10 grand, you price it at 10 grand, you're 100% of market, you sell that car. Did you give your car away? And a lot of times they'll say no, or if they're wising up a bit to what I say, they'll try to go down another funnel, but a lot of times they'll say, well, no. And then I say, okay, well, let me ask you something. If you sold it for 10, you got 100% of market, but you owed 11 on it and you lost 1,000, did you still give it away? And so that right there usually helps me overcome some of that. But the next thing I have to do is, because sometimes, again, a dealer won't let me go down that funnel. They'll say, well, it depends. His example, when I was talking to my rep, well, what's he going to say? Well, mine's certified, so I deserve more money. So I'm going to ask 12 grand for mine. And at that point in time, this dealer had a lot of age cars. And, I tell them, as a dealer, the next thing we need to agree on is, when's the best time to make the most money on a car? Okay, so this particular dealer had a lot of age. He didn't want to give away his cars, and I didn't want him to give away a lot of his age cars. His gross is going to get horrible. So I say, okay, how are we going to overcome this? And I'll ask him, when's the best time to make the most money on a car? And obviously every dealer, smart used car managers say when it's fresh. Okay, so then again, let's go back to a 10 grand average market retail price. I said, so if the best time to make the most money on a car is when it's fresh, do I want to increase the odds of it selling while it's fresh, or decreasing the odds of it selling while it's fresh? Again, most guys can't argue with that. We want to increase the odds. So if the market's at 10 grand and you want to ask 12, maybe because it's certified or whatever reasons, you just want to give a car a shot, are you increasing or decreasing the odds of it selling while it's fresh? And it's hard for them to disagree that we're decreasing the odds when it's selling when it's fresh. Okay, so if the best time to make the most money on a car is when it's fresh, then we want to increase the odds of it selling, then we're going to have to price it more competitively. I didn't say aggressive. I don't want to get aggressive until I have to, based on my age policy or how fast my turn and what I want to get done with my inventory, but at least be competitive out the gate. So again, if the market's 10, I ask 10, I get 100% of the market, I didn't give the car away. Customer can go down the street and find similar cheaper. There's going to be some more expensive. There's going to be some less expensive, but the average is 10. So once I can get them to agree on that, then, I want to help them. Most dealers don't need help getting rid of aged cars. That's not very difficult. You want to get rid of aged cars, keep dropping the price until they sell. The difficult thing is moving the fresh inventory and getting competitive out the gate, and then get aggressive the faster you want to move it while it's fresh. So again, the combat I don't want to give my cars away. You got to understand that what you owe on the car is irrelevant. That's the next thing I teach them. I said, okay, so if I say, well, I can't, if I walk them through, you get 10 grand for it, the market's 10 grand, you get 100% of market, you didn't give the car away, we agree, because you got 100% of the market, but if you owe 11 on it, then you just lost $1,000. But what you own a car is irrelevant to what it's worth. And so again, I'm walking them through these steps, and I'm going to ask them is, how many times, dealer, have you gone to an experience where you sat down with a customer, you show them 7 grand for their trade, and the customer goes, oh, whoa, hold on a second, I can't take 7 grand. And you ask them, well, what were you thinking? Well, I got to have 10. And you ask them, well, where are you coming up with that number? And they say, well, that's why I owe. I owe 10 grand. I can't trade it in for 7. What's the next thing you typically say? Well, Mr. Customer, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, if you owed $1 on your car, is it worth $1? No, it is worth what it is. I can go to the auction right now. Here's the book. Here's Kelly Blue Book, whatever you justify. These cars are worth $7,000. And so when we explain that to a customer, we're explaining it to make sense to them that what they owe on that car, whether it be 50 grand or $1, it's irrelevant to what the car is worth. But yet as dealers, a lot of times we go into pricing our cars and combating with customers that, well, I can't take 10 grand, I owe 11. Okay. But again, what you owe on that car is irrelevant to what it's worth. If the customer can buy one at 10 or go down the street for cheaper, why would they buy yours? And not that you can't, but you better explain it in your comments and your photos and everything else as they're shopping. This is all conversations you get to have with the customer, but I'm having these conversations with the dealer to try to get them to understand what they mean by, I don't want to give my cars away. Did I say I don't want to give me cars away? Wow. I need to work on my English here. So yeah, I don't want to give my cars away. And so that's how I overcome those objections, because we get it a lot with our dealers, especially fresh dealers that are that hire us have a lot of age issues. You know, the first thing they want to push back on is, well, I mean, I don't want to give my cars away. And or as we're working out of their age, their grosses is suffering. So they definitely don't want to lose gross on a 20-day-old car, because I'm already getting getting my butt kicked on the age cars. So another thing that I was talking to Repa was about, just don't sell any age cars. And you don't need our help to get rid of age. Okay. It's not that hard. The hard part is moving the fresh enough to not add to your age problem. Get your 0 to 60 moving so you don't add to that age problem. Let's say you have 20 units that are aged. Let's get the fresh stuff moving. Cut off the bleed through. Don't let any more cars age. Now you got 20 cars. Now you figure out how fast you can get off those 20. But I need to fix mine. Don't want to give me cars away. I don't want to give my cars away. When dealers say that, I need to understand their definition of giving a cars away. And a lot of times it's the fact they don't want to lose money, but what we owe on the cars are relevant. I know I see a lot of people jumping on now. Please revisit this to kind of see where I started with this. But hopefully this is helpful for you. This is how I talk to dealers to try to get them on the same page with us and get them to understand that the money's made on why it's fresh. Let's get competitive out the gate, get it moving, and what you owe on it, it's irrelevant. And all your gross problems are due to the age that you have or selling later in the cycle. You might not have much age, but if you're selling a lot of cars out of the 30, 45, and 60-day ranges, you're not maximizing gross. You want to increase gross, get 60 to 70% of your gross in the first 30 days. That's why we do hashtag first 30. That's why we got these wristbands first 30. If you want some of these wristbands, I got a few left. I need to order more, but I'll send your team some first 30 wristbands to focus on that first 30, get it turned. Again, hopefully it's helpful. Go to YouTube right up here. If this is on YouTube, I'm going to post a link to additional tips, and I'm going to put a link down here to subscribe. All these go on YouTube's and SoundCloud or iTunes for podcasts. So if you want a free inventory evaluation, lotpop.com. Thanks.